Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, today we will be having our 28th lecture. Today we will discuss the manual of corporate governance of Security and Exchange Commission of Pakistan. Basically, this is the actual manual of the government of Pakistan, in which following are the contents. First, we will put some light on the introductory part of the corporate governance manual. Then we will discuss what is corporate governance, then the background, the definition of corporate governance, the benefit of corporate governance, the Pakistani corporations, the origin of corporate governance in Pakistan, and then the need for corporate governance, why corporate governance is essential in Pakistani society. This manual is purely keeping in mind the Pakistani environment and context. Then the stakeholders, we will discuss some about the general stakeholders, then the shareholders, then directors, employees and creditors. Then the promoting reforms and shareholders activism, that is the fifth part of this content. Then we will discuss, which is the sixth part, is about the role and responsibilities of directors and managers, in which we will discuss the managers and directors distinguished, appointment of and proceedings of directors. Then the third part in the sixth section is fiduciary duties, then the powers and responsibilities of directors. The fifth part is almost about the directors' functions, their duties, responsibilities, etc., etc. And then the fifth part is basically liabilities of directors, executives and the non-executives directors, the CEO, the company secretary, the chief finance officer, the internal control system and reporting requirements. Then the seventh part is basically about scrutinizing financial statements, what every director should know. Then the first part in the sixth portion is the general, then the liability of directors, preparation of financial statements, tools for directors review, and how to prevent misleading and fraudulent financial statement, external auditors, role of the audit committee, then role of internal audit. In the end, we will conclude the whole manual. So this was basically about the corporate governance manual of Pakistan. In introduction part, in March 2002, the Security and Exchange Commission of Pakistan issued the Code of Corporate Governance, the code to establish a framework for good governance of companies listed in Pakistan's stock exchange. मार्च 2002 में सिक्योरिटी एंड एक्सचेंज कमीशन ऑफ पाकिस्तान ने अपना एक कोड ऑफ कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस लॉन्च किया, जिसमें मुख्तलिफ रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस थे अबाउट द गवर्नेंस ऑफ द listed companies in Pakistan Stock Exchange. The code is a compilation of best practices designed to provide a framework by which companies listed on Pakistan's stock exchange are to be directed and controlled with the objective of safeguarding the interest of stakeholders and promoting market confidence. In other words, to enhance the performance and ensure conformance of companies. So basically it's a very long manual. तो हम इसमें से जो main points है वो point out करेंगे और उस पर कुछ discussion करेंगे. So almost all these terms, all this sort of discussion हम अपने picture lectures में डिस्कस कर चुके हैं. So basically the main theme of putting this manual of corporate governance of Security and Exchange Commission of Pakistan के आपको समझ आए, and it's almost the same thing, लेकिन it's just a quick review about the manual. के manual basically जो पाकिस्तान का Security Exchange Commission का manual है about the corporate governance, वो क्या कहता है in your home or when you are alone. So आप इसको डिटेल में खुद पढ़ सकते हैं, लेकिन because of the time constraint हम इसमें कुछ main points highlight करेंगे, बाकी आप घर में खुद बैठ के इसको डिटेल में पढ़ सकते हैं इस मैनुअल को. So the code is a first step in the systematic implementation of principles of good governance, good corporate governance in Pakistan. Further measures will be required and are contemplated by the Security and Exchange Commission to refine and consolidate the principles and to educate stakeholders of the advantages of strict compliance. दूसरा मेन मकसद ये था सिक्योरिटी एक्सचेंज कमीशन का कि स्टेक होल्डर्स को अपने राइट्स के बारे में पता हो. अल्टीमेटली a change in the way in which directors, managers, auditors, stakeholders and other shareholders in Pakistan perceive corporate entities and their respective role in their conduct and control would be desirable. This will necessitate a change of corporate culture and which must not only be incremental but necessarily relevant. The study is a contribution toward this effort. इस जितने भी रूल्स में उसमें ये बताया गया था कि ऑब्वियसली कि जितने भी डायरेक्टर्स हैं, मैनेजर्स हैं, ऑडिटर्स हैं, शेयर होल्डर्स हैं, अदर स्टेक होल्डर्स हैं, हाउ दे कैन प्ले देयर रोल टुवर्ड द कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस, हाउ they can obey the rules and procedures of the this code. So what is corporate governance? According to the manual, the background, corporate governance is a relatively new term used to describe a process which has been practiced for a long as there have been corporate entities. This process seeks to ensure that the business and management of corporate entity is carried on in accordance with the highest prevailing standard of ethics and efficacy upon assumption that it is the best way to safeguard and promote the interest of all corporate stakeholders. कि वाई पाकिस्तानी गवर्नमेंट है रियलाइज्ड कि हमें हमारे पास भी अपना एक मैनुअल होना चाहिए, अपने कुछ स्टैंडर्ड rules and regulations होना चाहिए just to keep in mind the interest of all stakeholders in the stock market. The process of corporate governance does not exist in isolation but draws upon basic principles and values which are expected to permeate all human dealings including business dealings. Principles such as utmost good faith, trust, competency, professionalism, transparency and accountability, and the list can go on. Corporate governance builds upon these basic assumptions and demand from human dealings and adopts and refine them to the complex web of relationships and interest which make up a corporation. So basically इसमें जो human dealings चाहे वो if that is directly related with the corporation or if that is indirectly related with the corporation, उसके बारे में बताया गया है कि how they can work in the best interest of the corporation. At their earliest development, the business and management of corporation entities were governed in accordance only with the basic principles of agency and trust, which included the requirement for utmost good faith, transparency and accountability. However, with the growth of size of corporate entity, increasing complexities of business environment and the absence of a formal regulatory framework, basic agency and the trust principles were found to be inadequate to fully safeguard and promote the interest of stakeholders. Now, definition of corporate governance according to the manual. Now, definition of corporate governance according to the manual, the term corporate governance came into popular use in the 1980s to broadly describe the general principles by which the business and management of companies were directed and controlled, although its use is now common and the objectives to be achieved thereby generally understood. There is no universally accepted principle of corporate governance, although the utility of definition is invariably exaggerated. Definitions do have the advantages of providing a general framework for discussion and debate. For this purpose, and in the view of comparative infancy of subjective in Pakistan, a limited discussion of the definition of corporate governance is provided below. इस annual में basically ये बताया गया कि what is basically meant by corporate governance and their definitions. A basic definition of corporate governance, which has been widely recognized, was given in the report by the committee under the chairmanship of Sir Edwin Cadbury, titled "The Financial Aspect of Corporate Governance." The Cadbury report. And the corporate governance is a system by which the companies are directed and controlled. कि corporate governance वो system है जिसके through companies को आप direct भी कर सकते हैं और आप control भी कर सकते हैं. Board of directors are responsible for the governance of their companies. It's actually the board of directors normally जिसको shareholders appoint करते हैं, they are responsible of their companies. The shareholders' role in governance is to appoint the directors, as I've already told you, and the auditors, and to satisfy themselves that an appropriate governance structure is in place. The responsibilities of the directors include setting the company's strategic aim, providing the leadership to put them into effect, supervising the management of the business, and reporting to shareholders on their stewardship. The board's actions are subject to law, regulations, and the shareholders in general meeting. So this is basically a very comprehensive definition of corporate governance के how the board of directors will work, board of directors को appoint कौन करेगा, and how they can bring the transparency and the accountability aspect of the business. So another definition include that the International Chamber of Commerce is in its web based guide to corporate governance for business managers. Corporate governance is the relationship between the corporate managers, directors, and providers of equity and institutions who save and invest their capital to earn a return. It ensures that the board of directors is accountable for the pursuit of corporate objectives, and the corporation itself conforms to the law and regulations. Almost this is the same definitions as we have discussed above. So the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development provides another perspective in its principles of corporate governance by addressing 5 areas: the rights and responsibilities of shareholders, the role of the stakeholder, the equity or equitable treatment of shareholders, number 4, disclosure and transparency, and the duties and responsibilities of the board. Again, it defines corporate governance as: corporate governance is a system by which business corporations are directed and controlled. the corporate governance structure specify the distribution of rights and responsibilities among different participants in the corporation, such as board, managers, shareholders, and other stakeholders, and spells out the rules and procedures for making decisions of corporate affairs. In doing this, it also provides the structure through which the company objectives are set and the means of attaining those objectives and monitoring performance. So basically इस मैनुअल में मुख्तलिफ तरीक़ों से कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस को डिफाइन किया गया है. Just to make you a clear understanding to the basically the companies, for the companies stakeholders, the shareholders, and also the board of directors. And taken together, all definitions of corporate governance lead to the basic idea, which refers to the system by which companies are directed and controlled, focusing on the responsibilities of directors and managers for setting strategic aims, establishing financial and other policies, and overseeing their implementation and accounting to shareholders for the performance and activities of company with the objective of enhancing its business performance and conformance with the law, rules and practicing of corporate governance. So corporate governance is also the mechanism by which the agency problem of corporations takeovers, including the shareholders, creditors, management, employees, consumers and the public at large, are framed and sought to be resolved. कि जितने भी स्टेक होल्डर्स हैं, चाहे वो स्टॉक होल्डर है या क्रेडिटर्स हैं या मैनेजमेंट है या एम्प्लॉयज़ हैं, सो इनके बीच में जिस किस्म की भी कोई प्रॉब्लम हो, दैट उसके सोल्यूशन को बेसिकली वी कैन टर्म इट एज अ कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस. Now the benefits of corporate governance. Good and proper corporate governance is considered imperative for the establishment of a competitive market. This is empirical evidence to suggest that countries that have implemented good corporate governance measures have generally experienced robust growth of corporate sectors and higher ability to attract capital than those which have not. So basically benefit of corporate governance in simple words ये है कि अगर आपके सिस्टम में if you have good governance system for the corporation, so obviously you will attract the capital, you will attract the investment. अगर नहीं है, so it's very difficult to attract capital or investment. Now the Pakistani corporation. The evolution of Pakistani corporation entities has historically closely following the path taken by English corporate entities. इसमें फिर कुछ और ऐड किया हुआ है. For example, the English Companies Act 1844 provided the initial impetus to the development of corporations in undivided India. In 1855, the Joint Stock Companies Act was enacted in the undivided India. 1855 में जो अनडिवाइडेड इंडिया था, इंडिया पाकिस्तान जब डिवाइड नहीं हुए थे, तो एक नया एक्ट एनेक्ट किया गया था by the British government, which for the first time provided for registration of companies. This was followed by the Indian Companies Act 1882 and later by the Indian Companies Consolidation Act 1913. तो उसी 1855 के एक्ट को फिर इंडियन एक्ट में चेंज किया गया 1882 में, और फिर उसी को यू कैन से रीडिफाइन किया और in 1913 by the name of Indian Companies Consolidation Act. Pakistan जब बना, upon independence Pakistan inherited the Indian Companies Consolidation Act 1913. In 1949 this act was amended in certain respects, including its name, whereafter it was referred to as the Companies Act 1913 until 1984, when the Companies Ordinance 1984, the Companies Ordinance was promulgated. Following lengthy debate, Pakistani Companies was established and governed in accordance with the provision of the Companies Act 1913. Almost 19 जो Companies Act पाकिस्तान में काफ़ी अरसे चला. Even today, under the Companies Ordinance, many provisions remain unaltered from those contained in the Companies Act 1913. अभी भी जो पाकिस्तान का जो ऑर्डिनेंस है कंपनीज एक्ट, उसमें भी ऑलमोस्ट जो इंडियन एक्ट था 1913 का, वही रूल्स और पॉलिसीज उसमें इंक्लूड हैं. एंड इट्स प्रिकर्सर्स. एज अ रिजल्ट, डेवलपमेंट ऑफ कॉर्पोरेट law in Pakistan continues to be influenced by the English company law. So basically, as we know, कि 1913 was the British law, company law, जो कि लिया गया था 1982 के Indian Company Act से. So basically, पाकिस्तान में you can see the influence of the English company laws. In addition, the oldest stock exchange in Pakistan was incorporated in 1949. Soon after independence, तकरीबन 2 साल के बाद स्टॉक एक्सचेंज पाकिस्तान कॉर्पोरेट या इनकॉर्पोरेट हुआ. Soon after 2 years after independence, stock exchange in Lahore and Islamabad have developed even later. So, corporate entities in Pakistan are primarily regulated by the Security and Exchange Commission under the Companies Ordinance, the Security and Exchange Ordinance 1969, the Security and Exchange Commission of Pakistan Act 1997, and the various rules and regulations made thereunder. So the origins of corporate governance in Pakistan. The Security and Exchange Commission, since it took over the responsibility and power of the erstwhile Corporate Law Authority in 1999, has been acutely alive to the changes taking place in the international business environment, which directly and indirectly impact local businesses. Pakistan जो Security Exchange Commission है 1999 को इसको काफ़ी seriously लिया और उस पे काम करना शुरू किया. In December 1998, the institute उसको काम किस तरह शुरू किया कि in December 1998 the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Pakistan, जिसको normally ICAP कहते हैं, took the initiative to develop a framework of good governance in Pakistan. A committee representing the Security Exchange Commission, the ICAP, that is Institute of Chartered Accountancy of Pakistan, the Institute of Cost and Management Accountants of Pakistan, जिसको ICMAP normally कहते हैं, and the stock exchanges was established. A subcommittee was formed to undertake the task of formulating recommendations for drawing up a draft code of corporate governance. On March 28, 2002, after a process of consultation with stakeholders, the draft code was finalized and issued by the Security and Exchange Commission. The Security and Exchange Commission, in exercise of its power under the section 34 of the ordinance, issued directions to the Karachi, Lahore and Islamabad Stock Exchange to insert the provision of the code appropriately in their respective listing regulations. Through this means, the code was incorporated into respective listing regulations of the stock exchanges and is now applicable to all listed companies. So, काफ़ी struggle के बाद, काफ़ी तगुदों के बाद आखिरकार Security Exchange Commission of Pakistan ने अपना कोड that is called जो बना शुरू हुआ 1998 में, फिर 1999 पर उस पर काफ़ी काम हुआ और आखिर में मार्च 28, 2002 में वो लॉन्च हुआ. बेसिकली अब इस कोड में क्या है? द कोड इज़ अ combination of principles of good governance and a combination code of good practices. The code provides a framework tailored to address the complexities of the corporate sector in Pakistan and also draws together recognized best practices as embodied in various prominent international models of corporate governance. काफ़ी रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस है इसमें, जिसमें इसमें काफ़ी जो इंटरनेशनल मॉडल्स थे कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस है उससे भी काफ़ी मदद ली गई है टू मेक द बेस्ट governance rules for the companies in Pakistan. The mandatory provision deals with such matters as directors' qualification and eligibility to act as such, their tenure of office, responsibilities, powers and functions, disclosure of interest, training, meeting of the board of directors and the business to be conducted by it, the qualification, appointment, responsibilities of the chief finance officer and company secretary, the appointment of and responsibilities of the audit committee, the appointment and responsibility of the internal and external auditor, compliance by listed companies with the code. So इस act में basically जितने भी appointments थे directors, that is directors, independent directors as well as dependent directors, then the formation of committees, then the subcommittees, then the hiring of accountants, even the CEO, CFO, सब की almost काफ़ी डिटेल में इसको डिस्कस किया गया है. The need for corporate governance. The popularity and development of corporate governance framework in both the developed and developing world is primarily a response and an institutional means to meet the increasing demand of investment capital. In a McKinsey survey issued in June 2000, investors from all over the world indicated that they would pay large premium for companies with effective corporate governance. A number of surveys of investors in Europe and US support the same finding and show that the investors eventually reduce the investors in a company that practices poor governance. Obviously जितने भी सर्वेज हुए वर्ल्ड वाइड तो वो ही इसी बात को सपोर्ट करते हैं. इफ़ यू हैव effective governance, corporate governance, obviously this will attract companies and investors. अगर नहीं है so obviously you will be in trouble to get business or investment in your country. So corporate governance serves two indispensable purposes. It enhances the performance of corporations by establishing and maintaining a corporate culture that motivates directors, managers and entrepreneurs to maximize the company's operational efficiency, thereby ensuring return on investment and the long-term productivity growth. Moreover, it ensures the conformance of corporations to laws, rules and practices which provide mechanism to monitor directors and managers' behavior through corporate accountability that in turn safeguard the investors' interest. So governance, why the need of corporate governance is basically how we can put the law, rules and practices to make sure a good governance system. So good corporate governance ensures the accountability of the management and the board in use of such capital. The board of directors will also ensure legal compliance and their decisions will not be based on political and public relation considerations. So good governance आप उसको इंश्योर कर सकते हैं when आपके जो डिसीजन होते हैं that should be compliance with the legal requirement, not the political or public relations consideration. So corporate governance is the market mechanism designed to protect investors' rights and enhance confidence throughout the world. Institutions are awakening to the opportunities presented by the governance activism. As a result, boards and management are voluntarily and proactively taking steps to improve their own accountability. Simply put the corporations, including Pakistani corporations, have begun to recognize the need for change for positive gain. So board as well as the management, they are now working together to have good governance system in their company, ताकि बाकी कंपनीज भी इसी तरह स्टेप्स उठाएं. पाकिस्तान में भी आहिस्ते आहिस्ते चीज़ें काफ़ी रैपिडली चेंज हो रही है टुवर्ड द गुड गवर्नेंस. So the lack of transparency, unreliable disclosure, accountable management, and the lack of supervision of financial institutions, all of which are the consequence of inadequate corporate governance, combined to infringe investors' rights. Now, transparency can be achieved through three key market elements, that is openness, accounting standards, and compliance reports. Efficient market depends upon the investors' confidence in the accounting and openness of information provided by the public or provided to the public. Also, compliance with the international recognized accounting standards is necessary to ensure that the investors can effectively analyze and compare companies' data. एफिशिएंट मार्केट उस वक्त होती है जब इन्वेस्टर्स को कंपनीज के जो डेटा वो प्रोवाइड कर रहे पब्लिक को उस पर ट्रस्ट होगा, बिकॉज वन ऑफ द रीजंस कुड बी कि वो कंपनी जो इंटरनेशनल अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड्स हैं उसको वो फॉलो कर रहे हैं. सो अकाउंटेबिलिटी डिस्क्राइब द बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स ड्यूटी टू शेयर होल्डर्स. In particularly, the board of directors has a special duty and responsibility to develop the company's strategic vision, ensure the enhancement of long-term shares values. In doing so, the board of directors or the board and management should be open and accessible to inquiry by shareholders and other stakeholders about the condition and performance of the company, and should disclose how key decisions were made, including those that affect executive compensation, strategic planning, nomination and appointment of directors, and appointment of succession of managers, and financial records. Financial control. So accountability means to check the activities of the companies, check the activities of the directors, check the activities of the auditors, check the activities of the accountants, and to make sure कि आपके जो financial control है वो ठीक है. So the stakeholders we will discuss in general. A corporation enjoy the status of a separate legal entity. However, the formation of a public listed company is such that its success is dependent upon the performance of a contribution of factors encompassing a number of stakeholders. A stakeholder is a person, including an entity or group, that has an interest or concern in a business or enterprise through enterprise, though not necessarily as an owner. So stakeholder basically, as we have discussed in our previous lectures, anyone, it could be a person or it could be an organization or anything that have some interest related to that particular company. So direct stakeholder bhi hai and indirect stakeholders. Direct stakeholders means the employees of the company, the stockholders of the company. You can use even the suppliers of the company. These are the direct stakeholders. Indirect stakeholders, the customers, obviously, the environment, the society, these are the indirect stakeholders of the company. So therefore, it is imperative to recognize the importance of stakeholders and their rights. So it is very important that you should understand the importance and the rights of the stakeholders. Communication with stakeholders is considered to be an important feature of corporate governance, as cooperation between stakeholders and corporations allow for the creation of wealth, job, and sustainability of financial sound enterprises. It is the board duty to present a good balanced assessment of the company's position when reporting to stakeholders, both positive and negative aspects of the activities of the company should be presented to give an open and transparent account thereof. The annual report is a vital link, and in most instances the only link between the company and its stakeholders. The company's ordinance requires directors to attach in the internal report a director's report on certain specific matters. So annual report basically is the link between the management and the stakeholders. अब जो शेयर होल्डर था उसको क्या पता है कि कंपनी में क्या हो रहा है, लेकिन जब वो एनुअल जनरल मीटिंग में जाता है एंड व्हेन ही सीज द कंपनीज परफॉर्मेंस इन द एनुअल मीटिंग, सो एक उसकी जो एनुअल रिपोर्ट उसको मिलती है, दैट इज द बेसिक लिंक बिटवीन द मैनेजमेंट एंड द स्टेक होल्डर. इवन आउटसाइड जो क्रेडिटर्स हैं, जो बाकी इन्वेस्टर्स हैं, जो इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक है, सो इन सब के दरमियान लिंक मैनेजमेंट का वो प्रोवाइड करता है आपका एनुअल रिपोर्ट. The aim is for the directors to discuss and interpret the financial statement to give a meaningful overview of the enterprise's activity to stakeholders and to give users a better foundation on which to base decision. Apart from the above, stakeholders communication should consist of a discussion and interpretation of the business, including its main features, uncertainties in its environment, its financial structure, and the factors relevant to an assessment of future prospects, and other significant items which may be relevant to the full appreciation of the business. So report में तमाम चीज़ें किसी भी किस्म की कोई चीज़ हाइड नहीं करनी चाहिए फ्रॉम द स्टेक होल्डर्स. So a discussion should go beyond a mere analysis of the result of the year. It should cover trend and changes, profit forecast and future projections, as well as information and events beyond the balance sheet data that are relevant to the full appreciation of the company's affairs. As we have discussed कि सिर्फ statistics को interpret नहीं करना चाहिए, because there are many other factors that are related to the business. There are many other intangible factors जो companies के साथ link होते हैं. So वो सारी चीज़ें annual report में सारी चीज़ें management को discuss करना चाहिए with the stakeholders. A lot of research has been carried out and strategy developed for the purpose of protecting stakeholders' right, with the objective to keep the stakeholders informed about the aspect of company's performance and operations. काफ़ी research हुई कि it's the shareholders or it's the stakeholders' right कि आप उसको company के बारे में सब कुछ बताएं. It's clear and concise that can be readily understood by the average stakeholder, is objective, unbiased and balanced and cover positive as well as negative aspects. अब डायरेक्टर्स का काम यह है कि या मैनेजमेंट का काम यह है कि वो अपने जो एनुअल रिपोर्ट में जो एनुअल मीटिंग होती है, एनुअल जनरल मीटिंग AGM जिसको बोलते हैं, तो आप उसमें कंपनी के पॉजिटिव एज वेल एज नेगेटिव सारे एस्पेक्ट्स को डिस्क्लोज करें. डील्स विद द comments made in previous communications and whether or not these have been borne out by events. Follow top-down structure by discussing individual aspects of business in the context of the business as a whole is a narrative rather than a numeric analysis, although figures should be used where appropriate. सो कंपनी के बारे में उसकी होल परफॉर्मेंस के बारे में बताना चाहिए, ना कि सिर्फ स्टैटिस्टिक्स या जो न्यूमेरिक एनालिसिस है उस पर फोकस करना चाहिए. सो इंटरप्रेट रेशियोज एंड न्यूमेरिक इंफॉर्मेशन इन रिलेशन टू द फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट. यस, अगर आपको इफ यू नीड सम न्यूमेरिक इंफॉर्मेशन, इफ यू नीड सम रेशियोज to interpret your discussion, so you can get help from your numeric information. Look towards the future as well as review the past. पास्ट को रिव्यू करें एंड फ्यूचर के बारे में आप बताएं. इस प्रॉम्प्ट रेलेवेंट ओपन ट्रांसपेरेंट substance should take precedence over legal form. Now the shareholders. Now अब इस मैनुअल में ये बताया गया कि बेसिकली शेयर होल्डर कौन है, उसके राइट्स क्या हैं और उसको उसकी ड्यूटीज क्या हैं. The equity share gives rise to property rights, as the share may be bought, sold and transformed, entitling the investors to participating in the profit of the corporation while limiting the liability to the amount of the investment. It also gives rise to the right of the shareholders to information pertaining to corporate matters, along with the rights to influence decision making on such matters. Therefore, it is essential for the corporate governance framework to protect the rights of all shareholders. Means shareholders जो आपकी कंपनी की ownership अगर वो खरीद ले तो obviously they become the part of the your company. So a shareholder is not responsible for managing corporate activities, as responsibilities for corporate strategy and operations is entrusted with the board and the management team. Shareholders is not directly linked with the management practices. उसने शेयर होल्डर्स बोर्ड हायर करते हैं एंड बोर्ड फिर बोर्ड के अंडर आपकी मैनेजमेंट टीम काम करती है. शेयर होल्डर्स राइट मस्ट देयरफॉर फोकस ऑन issues such as the election of board, amendments of the company's organic documents, approval of extraordinary transactions, in addition to basic issues specified in company's ordinance and internal company's documents. In order to exercise these rights, shareholders' participation is essential in general meeting. Shareholders, including institutional investors, should carefully consider the cost and benefit of exercising their votes. A shareholder, and we have discussed कि how किस तरह shareholder अपने vote को वो apply कर सकता है. A shareholder must be familiar with the rules that govern shareholders meeting so that he may effectively vote. Dates, location and agendas of general meeting. And next, with the issues proposed to be discussed must be provided for the purpose of allowing the shareholders familiarity of the subject so that they may raise question and may also be able to place items on the agenda. Major shareholders को normally call की जाती है to attend the annual general meeting, along with the एक agenda होता है कि these are the issues that will be discussed in the meeting. So if you have any proposal, if you have anything to discuss, तो आप come up with some sort of discussion in the meeting. लेकिन सारे shareholders को allow नहीं किया जाता to attend the annual general meeting जब तक आपके पास एक limited number of shares ना हो किसी भी company के. Because normally कंपनी में कभी कभार thousands of millions of शेयर होल्डर होते हैं, तो सबको बुलाना इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल. सो जो मेजर शेयर होल्डर होते हैं उनको वो बोर्ड मीटिंग में बुलाया जाता है. Directors. The primary responsibility for the administration and performance of the company lies with the directors. The director administrates the company on behalf of the shareholders and their powers and duties are covered in the state. अब directors की hiring, dependent, independent, इसको काफी discussion किया गया है in chapter number 6. Employees, all employees have some responsibility for implementation of effective internal control procedures as part of their accountability for achieving objectives. They collectively should have the necessary knowledge, skills, information and authority to operate the company. This will require an understanding of the company, its objective, the industries and market in which it operates and the risk it faces. So the court requires that a statement of ethics and business practices must be prepared and circulated annually. by the board of creditors of every listed company to establish standard of conducts for directors and employees. के एम्प्लॉयज़ को दे शुड फॉलो कंपनीज का जो कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट है, जो कोड ऑफ एथिक्स है, उसको ओबे करना चाहिए, इवन द डायरेक्टर्स एंड द एम्प्लॉयज़. Creditors, contractual stakeholders like customers, contractors and subcontractors are fundamental for any corporation. Creditors play a very important role. In any corporation, a relationship based on trust develops between the corporation and such stakeholders. So, in terms of company's ordinance, creditors may nominate directors on the board of borrowers. Through their nominees, creditors can play a significant role in the corporate governance framework. So creditors also can play their role in nominating the directors for the board. Promoting reforms and shareholders activism. Shareholders activism is a catalyst by which to monitor, control and influence the board and the management. It is very rare for individual shareholders to participate in the decision making process, and until recently shareholders activism was largely exercised in the United States. We have discussed in previous lectures कि developing economies में shareholders activism का कोई concept almost ना पहले था ना अभी भी इतना ज़्यादा है. लेकिन इफ़ यू लुक एट द वेस्ट, तो वेस्ट में जो शेयर होल्डर्स एक्टिविज्म थे उस पर काफ़ी काम हुआ है, और शेयर होल्डर्स ने इंडिविजुअली कंपनी की पॉलिसी को क्रिटिसाइज़ करना शुरू कर दिया, कंपनी की मैनेजमेंट की प्रैक्टिसेस को क्रिटिसाइज़ करना शुरू कर दिया. While one of the most effective tool to install good governance practices, much remains to be done to promote shareholders activism in Pakistan. However, it would be useful to share a few examples of shareholder activism on other jurisdictions as a mechanism for a change. In March 1998, the US activist fund Lens Incorporation joined forces with the UK fund managers Hermans to form Hermans Lens. US एक फॉर्म और UK की ये मिलके इन्होंने हर्मन लेंस बनाया, फोकस फंड with an objective to exploit the rights of shareholders to turn around underperforming companies. In early 1999, Herman's Lens was engaged in the activist campaign targeting the Mirror Group. By the end of 1998, Herman Lens had acquired a 3% stake in the Mirror Group. Phillips and Dew Fund Management was a major Mirror shareholders, holding 22% of the stock, and was also a willing activist. Shareholders activism में we have discussed in detail कि how different institutional investors या different major shareholders can play their role toward the shareholders activism. नॉर्मली इंडिविजुअल इन्वेस्टर के पास इतना पैसा नहीं होता है जो इंडिविजुअल शेयर होल्डर हैं. इसके मुकाबले में जो इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर्स होते हैं, दे हैव अ वेरी लार्ज पूल ऑफ मनी, काफ़ी पैसा उनके उसमें होता है, लाइक म्यूचुअल फंड या बाकी जो पेंशन फंड एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा. सो दे कैन प्ले अ वेरी एक्टिव रोल टुवर्ड द शेयर होल्डर्स एक्टिविज्म. Other examples are numerous strategic decisions had destroyed shareholders' value of Mirror Group under the Chief Executive Officer David Montgomery, who also had a rather estranged relationship with the owners. In 1998, shareholders prevented Montgomery from taking over the chairmanship from Robert Clark by refusing to endorse Montgomery's succession plan. So through this we can understand how different shareholders can play an active role in the company. So continued talks in 1999 failed due to the some reasons, shareholders were concerned to opportunistic bid prices and were of the view that a regional independent media offer of 2,200 a share in January 1999 seriously undervalued the company. Shareholders of up to 50% of the equity were of the view that Montgomery should be removed. Phillips and Drew, Herman's Lenz, and Prudential, a 5% holder, told Sir Victory that they would support any board effort to remove Montgomery. So a mirror board consisted of the majority of executive directors, 8 in total. They were only 6 non-executive directors. The executive directors were confronted by the conflict or with the conflict of interest as a possibility of Montgomery surveying, such as effort existing, while 4 of the non-existing directors supported Montgomery removal. 6 executive directors stood behind him. The UK governance system granted direct power to the owners, enabling shareholders representing 10% of the stocks to call an extraordinary general meeting to vote on resolution of their choosing. Here, dissatisfied shareholders represented nearly 30% of the stock and represented their willingness to call an EGM for Montgomery removal if the executive directors would support a non-confidence motion. Basically जितने भी issues almost ये बाहर के issues हैं, लेकिन पाकिस्तानी गवर्नमेंट ने अपने corporate governance के मैनुअल में इसलिए इसको mention किया है ताकि यहाँ के जो companies के जो shareholders हैं, चाहे if he or she is the individual major shareholder या कोई institutional investors हैं, so how they can play a very effective and positive role toward the corporate governance. अगर board management किसी किस्म की कोई किसी fraud में मुब्तला है, if the CEO is involved in any sort of fraud या CFO is involved in any sort of fraud, तो इसको check करना, उसको highlight करना और उसको even implement करना shareholders का काम भी है. Shareholders can play their effective role in either criticizing the activities of the management या उसको अपनी कोई पॉलिसी को इम्प्लीमेंट करना मैनेजमेंट के लिए. सो इस चीज़ को अंडरस्टैंड करने के लिए ये जितने भी बाहर की एग्जांपल्स हैं इस मैनुअल में डिस्कस की गई हैं. So Montgomery refused to resign on a request made by Sir Victory at a January 1999 board meeting. Holmes highlighted the many areas of bad performance when he and the other institutions met 3 executive directors straight after the meetings. The executive directors decided to abstain on any 2 confidence vote, and Montgomery acknowledging his weak position resigned, and a new CEO was later recruited. So can you see how the institutional investors ने किस तरह जो major shareholders हैं उन्होंने अपने पसंद का CEO उन्होंने recruit कर लिया है. Similar group have been active in South Asia. For example, PSPD, an independent civil rights advocate NGO that was founded in 1994 and involved in shareholder activism since January 1997. The NGO is funded by individual donations and consists of lawyers, CPAs and professors who extend voluntary services. Companies targeted by the NGO include Samsung Electronics, SK Telecom, Hyundai Heavy Industry, Hyundai Investment Trust Company, Decom and Devo Corporation, PSPD activists have focused around monitoring, attending shareholders meeting, inspecting financial records, and constructive talks with the management of the aforementioned companies, and initiated a number of legal suits. So PSPD बेसिकली एक इंस्टीट्यूशनल एक ग्रुप है जिसमें काफ़ी छोटे छोटे जो लॉयर्स, CPAs और प्रोफेसर्स इन्वेस्टमेंट किए, एंड दे बिकम अ वेरी लार्ज इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर्स. सो इनके पैसों में काफ़ी कंपनीज में इनका जो एक्टिविज्म है वो चल रहा है. So the NGO has also successfully campaigned for the election of independent outside directors. SK Telecom management accepted 3 outside directors. कि इस NGO ने किस तरह कंपनीज को इन्फ्लुएंस किया है फॉर डिफरेंट पॉलिसीज. के टेलीकॉम जो SK टेलीकॉम है उसकी मैनेजमेंट ने 3 आउटसाइड डायरेक्टर्स को एक्सेप्ट करी बिकॉज ऑफ देयर इन्फ्लुएंस ऑफ. सो आउटसाइड डायरेक्टर्स हैव वीटो पावर ऑन related party transactions which proved to be very effective. Hyundai heavy industry management accepted and outside directors, and many more. Outside directors presence and minority shareholders monitoring are effectively utilized by management. So basically इस NGO में छोटे छोटे इन्वेस्टर्स हैं, लेकिन छोटे छोटे इन्वेस्टर्स से मिलके इन्होंने काफ़ी कंपनीज में अपना इन्फ्लुएंस शो किया. इन द केस ऑफ सैमसंग इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स, PES, PCS, PSPD were unsuccessful in their endeavor for the election of 1 independent outside directors and were only able to gain 16% support, and that too mainly from foreign institutional investors. Persistent campaigning has, however, affected reforms that have strengthened minority shareholders' rights, and corporate governance regulations have been accepted as a result of constant effort. So the basic thing is that with the help of small investors becoming a very huge investor, आप किस तरह कंपनीज के पॉलिसीज को इफेक्ट कर सकते हैं, आप किस तरह अपने बोर्ड स्ट्रक्चर को इफेक्ट कर सकते हैं, आप किस तरह इवन CEO को फायर कर सकते हैं, आप किस एंड हाउ एक्टिव शेयर होल्डर्स कैन हायर द CEO, या उसको किस तरह अपनी पसंद का CEO को वो किस तरह रिक्रूट कर सकता है. सो ये सारे एग्जांपल्स को इसी मैनुअल में इसलिए डिस्कस की गई कि द शेयर होल्डर्स, द एक्टिव शेयर होल्डर्स और इवन द स्मॉल शेयर होल्डर्स शुड अंडरस्टैंड इट्स इन्फ्लुएंस एंड पावर. दिस इज द एंड ऑफ today's lectures. Allah Hafiz.